So what we're going to do today is just talk about tips for teaching social media to your students, but the bigger thing that I'm going to teach you is what tools are out there, the way different journalists are using social media so that you can impart that knowledge, and also some case studies that you can use in your examples to students. And as Deb said, this is a social media session presented or made possible by the Society of Professional Journalists. If your students aren't aware of the organization, send them over there. It's a fantastic place to go just to do some research, to find out about ethics, to really connect with other students. I mean, a ton of student organizations on different campuses and across the country belong to SPJ. It's funny, every time I speak at the national conference, the bulk of the people I see and the most active people I see there aren't the seasoned journalists. And they're there in force, but it's the students who are excited about getting into this profession and who are excited about what journalism is. And they realize that SPJ offers them that opportunity to connect with people who have been doing this and gives them the resources to figure it out. So let's just head into a difficult landscape. This is me. If you look on the web, I'm pretty much everywhere. All these slides are Facebook and Twitter and Google Plus and random stuff. But if you need to reach me, there's some information. I'll give that again at the end. Also, you can put away your pens and paper because at the end you'll get all my speaker notes in a PDF. There's a link. It's already online. I'm not going to give it to you now because you'll take away my Wi-Fi signal. So essentially, buckle up. We're going to go through a lot of tools. We're going to go through a lot of techniques. And you'll see some social tools that are familiar to you. Some will be brand new. Some will be useless. You'll look at a number of the tools out there and be like, well, how in the world would you ever use this to report a story? Why would I even tell my students to go use Untapped or something like that? We're not going to cover Untapped, but it's a great app if you like beer. Essentially, students need to know what social media is. And my definition is that social media is any tool that allows you to communicate with others, informally, formally, and quickly. And what that means is that social media isn't just Twitter and Facebook. It's the telephone. It's every means of communication that is social. And I think a lot of us get so caught up in social media has to be a technology tool that you navigate to via your iPhone or via your laptop that we lose sight on the greater task of communicating clearly with others. So the first tools that I'm going to show you probably aren't considered social tools. I call them listening tools. And what I like to tell my session attendees is that social media allows you to be everywhere at the same time. It allows you to listen. And what I would tell your students is to actively listen if you can. Do the searches online to find out everything about the world. We were talking right before the session about students who don't really use these tools except in their own cocoon, in their own fishbowl of social and school and family, and that's it. And they don't go outside of that comfort zone to find out what's going on in the world around them or to find out what's going on with different social tools. I'm going to try and get this to stop pinging a little bit and try not to shut it off again. Some of the best social tools out there allow you to set yourself up to communicate by having perspective and by knowing what else is out there. The big thing is still connection. If you can impart to your students that they need to connect with whomever they're going to get stories from, whoever they're going to communicate with, and that social media is new technology, but it's not new techniques. And that's probably why both Deb and I harp at the beginning about SPJ, knowing the ethics, knowing the pure journalism skill set is really what's important. What's changed is just the way that people get their information, the way audiences go out there and find out the news. I had to check the iPhone to find out that Texas did not win the World Series. After the night before, when I went to bed in the 7th inning and tweeted out as I went to bed, just saw the winning home run in the World Series, congratulations, Texas. And I got berated by everyone who's following me the next morning because they're like, oh, you're such a loser, you couldn't stay up past 10 and beyond that. But it also means that everyone out in the world is competing with your students for jobs, because everyone thinks that they can be a citizen, as I call it, citizen reporter. And this is where we could go completely sideways, but we started a little late, so I won't get fully on the soapbox. But I think it's really silly of us as educators and professionals to allow the modifier citizen to go before journalist. Because journalist is journalist is journalist. You don't have a citizen plumber, you don't have a citizen psychiatrist, you don't have a citizen architect design your new home. The people out there who are reporting the news are just that, they're reporters. And that same skill set can be performed by a traffic camera or a flip cam that you tie to your cat and send it into the neighborhood. So reporting is different from journalism, and I think that as the educators of tomorrow's journalists, we should make that distinction and take some pride in what we do. One warning about the plethora of tools is that they're flavor of the day. They're going to be here for a moment and then gone, like Google that buys everything and then kills it. The tools are very temporary. And the other thing about social media tools that everyone should know is that there certainly is a cost to it. There's a time suck that happens with everything. And if you've fallen into the pattern of becoming a slave to your social media tools, you're pulling the iPhone out in the bathroom, which is also why I tell people never buy a used iPhone. But I know a ton of people that get up and update their Facebook statuses at 3 in the morning. And it's like, how connected do you have to be? One of the management tools that I tell journalists when I give sessions like this is do a 10-minute, it's almost like a 10-minute rule of social media management. And I don't think you need this for your students, but it's good to know. Take your coffee, sit down at your desk, and don't look at your email, don't answer your voicemail. Spend 10 minutes using some of the tools you're going to learn to just navigate the web, navigate the social sphere out there, and find out what's going on and become familiar with the tools. But after 10 minutes, put it away. If you don't use it in everything that you're doing, perform your job however else you perform it. And don't get distracted by this stuff. So many people think, well, I have to be there. If you talk to a ton of organizations, companies, communications firms, everyone's like, oh, we need a Facebook page. Oh, we have to be on Twitter. We have to be here. We have to be there. You don't have to be anywhere. The only place that you should be, and I'm not a fan of shoulds, but this is probably the one that I'll give you, is that you should be communicating to your audience where they want to receive your information. So if your audience is over on Twitter, use Twitter to get them. If they're not using Twitter, you don't need it. You can listen to it, you can know how to use it, you can know how to teach it, but you don't have to be locked into that. The other tip, maybe not warning, is just always stay hungry. Because as all these tools change all the time, keep an eye out to look for new stuff. And there's a resource at the end that will allow you to do that as well. The big dog in all of this is Google. If you use Google at all, you're, I think, 80% of the way there. Because Google allows you to listen, it's free, it's mostly accurate, and it's comprehensive. Because it covers everything. You have Google alerts, you have Google searches of everything that's going on. And when I'm doing any active listening or doing any content creation or curation or even researching stories and doing reviews for different trade shows that I cover, first stop is Google. And I think your students should figure out the real power of search engines. I'm not a big fan of Bing. And the reason for that is the acronym Bing is not Google. They don't have the same reach that Google has. And they're more based on consumerism than Google is, or at least at the beginning they were. If you had typed in the search for shoes, the local shoe store would come up. If you typed in a search for movies, the movie theater listings would come up and it would ask you if you wanted to buy tickets. Fandango and everything would be linked in and come right up for you. Now they've gotten a little better and realized that people don't want to be sold when they're just doing a search on a story about boats. They're not going to go buy a boat. They just want to find out what the boats are. What these tools allow you to do is keep an ear to the ground, and by listening, it allows your students to check out other news sources, check out videos, find out what people are watching, because what's popular and what you hear people talking about is really the source for other news. One of the things I really preach is derivative story ideas. If you can think of a story idea that jumps off of another great story you read, you're going to be the first one there with that story. Essentially, let's talk water, because I have it in my hand. If there's a story about the number of water bottles that are wasted each year and their harm to the environment, the derivative story idea off of that is people on the other end, the manufacturers of those bottles, the feature on the company that maybe was started on a shoestring by someone who wanted to get into the plastic bottle business because back when Perrier came over to this country, they thought, wow, this is what I want to be in, and they've staked their whole life on that. And that, as a story, is a great feature idea. It's a great human interest story on something you never would have thought of. You would have just thought, oh, these are floating in the ocean and killing things. And if you stack them end to end, based on some of the ads I've seen lately, you could go to the moon with them. But you don't have that real hook for a story. And that's another thing that I think students need to know is reinforcing that whole audience thing. Try to find things that resonate with them. Get them excited about stories by listening and reading other stories. One of the other, or two of the other resources I like to give are Yahoo and Facebook. By all accounts, students are out there, and as I said right in the beginning, not everyone was here. I said the students in your classes are on Facebook and they're texting, and that's pretty much it. Not a ton of students are using Twitter unless it's doing Foursquare check-ins and sending that stuff over to Twitter or using it at different events. Is this pinging way loudly? How's that? So they're on Facebook and they're text messaging, but if you can give them other resources to go listen to or use those tools in the same way that they're already using them, have them go to Facebook and read status updates from everyone, not just the people they communicate with all the time. See if they can widen their listening reach and go like a bunch of pages for special interests. Not special interests like oil and stuff like that, but for companies. Just different pages that are out there, and try and hear what's going on in the world around them. Have them do a geographic search over on Twitter to find out what people are talking about. Have them use Place Blogger to find out who in the region is blogging and what those topics are and why these people are so passionate about different topics within their geographic region. If you go a mile outside of school, you might find blogs on so many different topics that it would blow your mind, but these kids are in their own cocoon. The best tool I'm going to show you today is this. It's a cute little robot. His name is Addict-O-Matic, and I'm going to jump over to the browser. Bear with me because the screen doesn't mirror, so I don't have a browser on here. I'm going to have to type over my shoulder. Come up. Okay, there's Addict-O-Matic. There's my cursor. Did I spell that right? Water bottle. And what Addict-O-Matic does is gives you searches in all of these areas on any topic. So you can see all your videos and all your news and all your Twitter stream and all your Facebook stuff and all your YouTube in one spot. Best tool ever, because if you show this one thing to your students, as the slogan on the little robot thing says, they will be able to inhale the web and just see everything that's out there. And when you talk about active listening, if they have to go do a story based on some topic, why not give them so much more information than they could ever need and have them make some intelligent decisions about what to include and where to go and who to reach out to, than just give them one thread and have them try and chase that one thread down. But that's my favorite little tool. Another tool that's kind of cool, and I only learned about it a couple weeks ago, is called Q. That's how it's pronounced. But kyoo.com allows you to search within topic areas. Even though this picture here has YouTube and all the social networks around it, that's not really accurate. It should say politics and entertainment and sports and news and disasters, because it segregates all that information out into different silos. So if you're covering a political story, Q is a really cool place to see where everyone's talking about that one thing, about the election, about different entertainment news, about anything. The big key in all of these is to try and be social. Students need to have conversations using some of these tools for them to get comfortable with the rules behind them. And we'll go into some social etiquette in a second based on a bunch of different tools. The other thing to let students know, and you're probably already doing this, is that journalism is hyper-local now. Everyone cares about the story around the corner and the global story, but that's about it. We're not as focused as an audience on stories that might be happening the next state over, a couple states over, or even a few counties over. We want to know what's happening next door and at the local school and in our hometowns, because that's what people are paying for. And advertisers are paying because they can really target the local readers, because everyone else is hyper-local. So it's important to have them think of new topics, have them have a smaller focus, if that makes any sense, just a tighter geographic focus, and have bigger, richer stories. So, okay, the family business that created plastic water bottles, wouldn't that be great if that's right there in their hometown? I've harped on this before. Are you the audience? You have to get students to think like the reader, like the viewer, like anyone who's consuming their information, and to find out what's going on just in their area. There are specific audiences for various sites. Facebook, outlets that use Facebook have a different audience viewing their news there and reading their information there than do outlets that only do broadcast and aren't involved in social. And the same thing happens when CNN tweets out every headline only on Twitter and doesn't share stuff in different areas. They're reaching a certain audience, and they're actually being fairly smart about it. I did a session at the Columbus Dispatch a couple of years back, and when I was there, I was surprised at how advanced they were at the time. And there was a little hiccup in the presentation, not my end of it, theirs. I'll go into that in one sec. But I was really encouraged, because I thought, wow, this small town, Columbus, maybe not the smallest town, but this small town news outlet is using Twitter and they're using Facebook, and they're sending people over to their news, and they're excited about it. At the second half of the session, we do a listen and then a communicate session. Right at the beginning of the communicate session, which is how to communicate with your audience and how your existing technology is working and your existing approach is working, I went to their Twitter site and I found a tweet about a news story, and I thought, wow, this is cool. And I clicked through it and it brought me to their Facebook page, and I thought, wow, this is fantastic. They're pulling me along. I assume that the link in their Facebook status update will bring me to their site, and I'll get to see the whole news story. So I click on that, and then I hit the paywall. The trouble was everyone in the room was not thinking like their audience, because they were all signed in to their system. So they didn't realize, hey, when I tweet something, hey, when I put something on Facebook, Joe and Josephine Sixpack out in the real world are going to hit that paywall because they don't have a password to my systems. So it's really important to know how your audience behaves, how they're going to consume your content, and to put yourself almost physically in their shoes to figure out how they're going to use your properties. I stole this from Victor Hernandez at CNN. He calls it and I think he stole it from someone else, but I'm giving him credit. It's called the Joe Francis rule. And if you're not familiar with Joe Francis, he's the creator loosely, of Girls Gone Wild, all the videos that are popular among some people. I don't know who they are. And he's created this whole network or property collection not for the people who appear in his videos, because scantily clad women are not going out there looking for these videos. He's producing content for the small percentage of people, or for the large percentage of consumers that care about the content. If you want to read that for a second. It's a very important lesson when you're talking about knowing your audience. Joe Francis knows his audience, and he's producing this content for the bigger audience. And I think that's a lesson that I probably didn't learn as a journalist until, I don't know, 10 years into my career. I've been doing this 21 years for a variety of companies. I've been freelancing the whole time. But the only thing that spurred me on to more freelance success and got me some names like NPR and the New York Post and Boston Globe was that I finally saw the light and figured out, wow, if I can identify who this story is for, doesn't that make me so much more qualified to write a query letter or call an editor or pitch the story and make it attractive to them and make it seem like, hey, this is something that their readers are going to want to read. Not something that I, as a creative professional, just wanted to write. Yeah, it would be fun to go cover motocross and see if I could get a ride around the track and do all that stuff, but who cares? That's just Jeff riding around some dirt track. Why not find a story that resonates with readers of a certain publication? So let's go into some of the tools. Twitter for Newsrooms is a fantastic resource for students to at least peruse. They don't have to get involved with it. They should get involved with Twitter, which we're going to cover in a sec. But Twitter for Newsrooms just gives them a lot of resources on how newsrooms are using this tool. And it's a nice little window into how this stuff works when you're creating news. Twitter itself, if they're not, I mean, was I correct in the past? Maybe I can ask a question or two. How many of you, I guess, have asked your classes how heavily they use different social media tools? So are your kids heavy into Twitter, by a show of hands? I see a few shaking heads over here, a few hands over there. How about Facebook? And I mean, that stands to reason because you've got 800 million people over there. But it also stands to reason because the background behind Facebook was in the university system. What about texting? Are they doing it as much as I think they are? And please shout this out. Any other social networks that they're using that, and I'm not thinking of services. I'm not thinking of Pandora or any of the music services, but any other social, maybe location-based services or anything like that that they're using? Go ahead.
Well, when they graduate, they go on LinkedIn.
Okay. Why do they wait so long?
Well, when they graduate, they're looking for jobs. As soon as they hit the job market.
Okay. What I'm gonna, yeah.
The big one right now for us on our campus is Pinterest.
Okay.
It seems to really be taking a lot.
Pinterest. So that was Pinterest, right? Oh, sorry. What I was going to say about LinkedIn, and then we'll cover yours in a sec, is that if they're not already on LinkedIn, they should get there now, because LinkedIn is maybe the most underappreciated journalism research tool out there. A ton of journalists are using LinkedIn to research groups and to go over to the answers section and find out what people are talking about and find sources for different stories. If you want to find an engineer, there's no better place to go than either a college or a university campus where you go to that department and probably many of you guys have that resource right at hand. But LinkedIn is even easier because they can do it right from the dorm room, right from the classroom, and find groups that are as specialized as application performance engineering, which is measuring how an application performs on different types of systems. Nobody knows that unless they go there and can find that stuff out. But LinkedIn, I don't have slides for that. I do have the word LinkedIn on, I think, my second to last slide with a couple stars next to it, because I never want anyone to forget that. Because as students think of these tools, they should realize that they're all very useful in reaching out to different people, and LinkedIn more so than many others. The conversations there might not be always ongoing, but as a research tool, it's fantastic.
People might be interested that if you do the 1-hour webinar with LinkedIn, any professional journalist gets a premium subscription for free.
I like that. I hadn't heard that. That's cool. Did everyone hear that? If you do the 1-hour webinar with LinkedIn, if you're a professional journalist, you get the premium subscription for free. So that's really cool. Okay, let's go back to Twitter for a second. Twitter allows you to search for your story, as I mentioned before, geographically, or based on topic, or based on hashtag. There are also many ways, if students don't already use Twitter, to manage the Twitter stream. A lot of people say, oh, I'm not using Twitter because it's just so much noise and it's so difficult to manage. Well, tools like Hootsuite and TweetDeck, Seismic shouldn't be in there, I should have removed that. Hootsuite and TweetDeck are fantastic for managing different personas, different tweet streams, and different search terms. You can do it all on your laptop, or they have apps for Android and for iPhone and different platforms of mobile. But when you're able to search for a different topic, it makes Twitter a lot more useful. The big thing that people complain about with Twitter is that, oh, I have 41 followers and no one responds to me when I tweet something out at 9 o'clock at night. And it's like, well, where do you think these 41 people are at that time? They're not sitting there waiting for your tweet about whatever you're doing, about the fact that you saw the winning home run in the World Series just happen. They're not waiting for that to come up so that they can respond and applaud you for being so smart for getting more sleep. They're somewhere else. Twitter for the win. Twitter is fantastic for putting out crowdsourced questions to a passionate community. There's a great demographic of users out there because the people who use Twitter use it in a powerful manner. They try and be connected to a lot of people. They try and read a lot of updates from everyone. And as I just mentioned, they're very passionate about their topics. So if you're looking to get a question answered and have the right number of followers or can put a question out there correctly, you're going to get some responses. Twitter fails because timing is key. And as I mentioned before, when you put a tweet out there, it only shows up on the screen for a little bit and moves. And my favorite or least favorite story is a year or so ago, I was doing a food show. I still do it sporadically. But after we had filmed the episode, I tweeted out who wants to meet us at Starbucks for coffee. And it was lunchtime. It's in Boston. I had 4,000 followers at the time. I have a few more now. And I thought, of 4,000 people, we're going to get a handful of people. I don't want to bury Starbucks under a ton of people, but a lot of my Twitter followers are in Boston. So I thought, okay, we should get almost like a round table-esque group of people and have some cool coffee chat after the lunch. One guy responded, and I thought, well, this is just stupid. Twitter stinks. And then I sat back and realized that, well, I was expecting too much from Twitter, which is what a lot of people do. They just want to sign on and suddenly be lazy and get information from people and have a lot of interaction. And that's not how it works. You have to really invest some time in it. And that goes back to my earlier thing about how all these social tools have a cost. They have a time investment that you have to put in before you get good at them. And good is very subjective because the other thing you should know is that there are no set, hard and fast rules for any of these tools. I mean, there are conventions and there are etiquette things and norms, but there's nothing that says you shouldn't tweet after a certain hour, or you shouldn't swear in your tweets, or you shouldn't do this, or you shouldn't do that. The other fail, as I just mentioned, is that there are some obscure rules and etiquette, and it might be gone, like everything else. Some Twitter tricks and tips are one thing that I'm surprised that so few people know. You cannot send a DM to someone, a direct message to someone, if they are not following you. So if you want to take your conversation offline and keep it private, you have to just get them to follow you. And sometimes that's difficult to do. Now it's done an awful lot, at least in the social media fishbowl, by shaming someone into saying, hey, I thought you were following me, what happened? And that's out there for everyone to see, and then you're like, oh, I got to blame it on Twitter. Except you were so boring, I unfollowed you.
Hey, Jeff?
Yeah.
Just a question about that. I see so many journalists with, huge followings, and they're like following one person.
Right. There are different methods for using social tools, and if you're clear about how you use them, people shouldn't have a problem with that. So if you look at major news outlets like CBS, has 6 million followers or some absurd number, and they're following 100 or 200 people. And that doesn't allow for a real conversation. But what it does allow them to do is reach people with dispatches, with broadcast information about different stories. And what they're doing is using that tool clearly to anyone that takes the time to look or anyone that's followed their stream, just as a broadcast medium. Not the way I would choose to do it as a freelancer, not the way I would suggest students to do it as aspiring journalists, because I want to have a conversation. I want to have at least some ratio of the people I'm following me back, so that when I tweet out that thing about Starbucks, I can get a response. When I tweet out, hey, does anyone know anyone that works in a plastic bottle manufacturing plant, that I have some chance of success of getting a response. CBS doesn't care. They're big enough that they can do what they want. But if you look underneath that, they have a number of reporters, number of journalists who may have their own Twitter accounts where the ratio is probably almost equal, where they have a bunch of viewers who follow them as TV personalities that they follow back, and they have conversations. I did a story that I think will come out. I didn't do it. I was interviewed. It's coming out in a week or two for WHDH in Boston. And they came and interviewed me about brands using social media to reach out to people. And the cool thing was that before they even reached out to me, they made sure they were following me so that we could have DM conversations, so I could give them my phone number, so we could pick a place to meet. And I thought, okay, well, this is a smart way to do this. And it really is a smart way to preemptively follow someone, so that it's almost like the medieval thing of just showing your right hand. You're showing them you're unarmed and that you don't have any ill will or hidden agenda. If you want to send a note to someone but also let everyone in your Twitter stream see something, use a character like a period or just a random character before the at a beginning of a sentence. If I sent out a note at Jeff Jarvis, blah, 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 saw you in the bar last night, sorry I went to bed before the game ended, or whatever, and I don't put the character before the at, the only people who will see that tweet are people who follow Jeff and me. That's it. No, it doesn't exist to anyone else unless they're on the Twitter app on their laptop and following Jarvis's stream or my stream. But otherwise, you're not going to see that. And a lot of people don't realize that either. So if you and I are having a Twitter conversation and I'm going at your name and you're going at Jeff Cutler and we're going back and forth, the only people who see that are people who follow us both, which is something that a lot of people also don't know. They think, hey, I can at Ashton Kutcher, and everyone who follows Ashton Kutcher and follows me is going to see that. Trouble is, no one follows both of us, or maybe they do, but. And then there's some abbreviations to know. RT is for retweet, if you're not familiar. That just means that you're sharing someone else's information. RR is a little more obscure. Twitter instituted a rule that you can't tweet the same exact phrase more than once. So you can't retweet yourself. So Rerun gets around that because you can put RR before it and then send it out because you've changed it. The @ HT is hat tip. So you're giving someone credit for a thought, but maybe you rewrote it. Sure. Oh, FF is follow Friday. And you should only see it on Friday, but some people like me do it on Sunday when you forgot to do it on Friday. And what that is a neat way for me to share to all my followers. So I'm sharing to 7,000 people. Here are the people that I think have value, and this is why I follow them. You might want to go see who they are and follow them as well. And what people do is hashtag FF and then list a bunch of names. And you'll see that and you'll be like, what's going on? What's the deal? And are they swearing at these people? What's going on? So, but yeah, it's follow Friday. The for the win, for the loss. MT is the big one now, especially for journalists, because if you want to be above board with using tweets as quotes or using tweets as information, MT means modified tweet. So you're taking credit that you edited that phrase from whomever it came into a format to fit, because a lot of people also don't realize that if you want to share someone else's information, their tweet should have been 120 characters or fewer. If it's more than 120 characters, you can't retweet it because it automatically gets an RT, their name, and then the tweet. And names are long enough that it takes up all those extra 20 characters and it won't fit. The difference is that Twitter did institute a tool back February or so that allows you to retweet through their API, through their coding, that you just hit a button and it says it was retweeted. And you don't have to worry about doing anything, except you don't really see all of those come up as frequently as someone who's putting an RT on. The other reason to do an RT as a retweet is to add your own thought at the end in parentheses or give a comment. I say Twitter's pretty clicky. It is. People have their own circles that they talk in, but if you go to Muckrack, which is a slide at the end, muckrack.com is a list of professional journalists on Twitter. And to get on that list, and I have tried, and I know the guy that created it, and I'm not on there. To get on there, you have to be producing a regular piece, not daily, but at least weekly with a major publication to be listed in the whole Muckrack Twitter list of journalists. So it's a fantastic resource for students to go look at to find out who's out there also tweeting. Oh, the 60 to 70% thing. That's the trouble with doing the fancy keynote that drops all this stuff in when you back up. The 60 or the 70-30 or 60-40% thing is just my feeling that if you don't share as a person, people aren't going to be that interested in the other stuff that you have to say. So if you sit there and broadcast, as Deb said, all the time, unless you provide some real value in that broadcast, you're not going to have 6 million followers. What I like to do is about 70% talk about the food I'm eating, the trips I'm taking, the stuff I'm doing, the bar I'm at, the beer I'm drinking, whatever. And 30% of the time, I will tweet out, here's a blog post I did, here's where I'm speaking next, here's what I just learned, here's a new tool, here's a link to a story. How friendly do you want to be with your sources? This goes to journalists who are covering the legal system. Well, do you want to friend each lawyer or the prosecutor or the judge on Facebook? Where do the ethics come in? What does your outlet say? Can you still report fairly if you're poking the judge on Facebook? That's not a euphemism. One of the cool tools also on Twitter is called Muter. It allows you to shut out a lot of noise. So if people were tweeting hashtag World Series all last night and you don't care about the World Series, you could use Muter to block that hashtag entirely. This happens a lot in social media sphere and also at conferences where people are tweeting out where they're at, and everyone you follow, because that's your community, is at the same event. you don't have to see all those hashtags about that same event, or something major is going on and you're like, I don't want to see any more Egypt news for the day. So you can set the time on it and just tell it not to give you any more, and it strips all that out of the stream that you're watching.
So you can do that for just an amount of time?
Amount of time and a certain hashtag or certain terms or people. The big thing with Twitter is just knowing the rules. Your outlet can decide whether you can use a tweet as a quote or not. Using your ethics correctly by friending or not friending people, as I mentioned before, and using the tools to research is very important. We have about 9 minutes left. I have a ton of slides left. I can blast through them, or we can just start doing some questions and I'll give you the link to the resources, or a mix of both. One thing I did want to show you is how a couple different outlets have used Twitter to generate interest in being interviewed. And the cool thing is that each of these tweets was put out there to a certain person. So it was directed to Arbonizer or directed to, to Danielle. And the reporter knew who they wanted to talk to. And they sent a tweet out and was very clear about, here's all the information, here's how you contact me. Do you want to do this interview? I'm doing a story. And that's how a lot of journalists are using this tool when they're not using it to search. They're using it to engage and to just reach out to sources. Facebook, I think you know about. And start raising your hands if you want to do the questions thing. Facebook, I think you know about. One of the best examples in my mind of an organization that uses Facebook correctly is WBUR, the NPR radio station in Boston. They're really good about engaging. And the thing that you might not really understand about Facebook, and your students certainly don't because they use Facebook just to find out where the party is or show photos of a kitten, is that comments are power on Facebook. If you can show that people are excited about your photo and you get a ton of comments and a ton of likes, that gives you some status in your social community at school. That's what kids want. That's what anyone on Facebook seems to want. But it works well for journalists too. So if you can ask a question in the right way, you're going to get some comments. I put newspaper online policies here just because your outlet has to decide whether you can use some of those comments as attributed quotes, or if it's fair for you to reach out to people who are just sharing. These comments provide real interaction. They do identify worthwhile sources because people have expertise and passion about what they're talking about. The companies that are doing it are all over the place. Here are 3 of my favorites. The Haro thing, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Help a Reporter Out. It's a fantastic resource for finding experts, and another great resource that students should know about, because journalists can use it for free. Experts, I believe, have to pay a fee or have to do something to be listed there. But the network of experts is huge. So instead of going over to LinkedIn and looking at groups, go over to Haro and find an expert there as well. And the breadth is a lot wider over there. Really cool tool. The other thing that your students should do if they are using Twitter at all is Monday nights log on to Journ Chat, which I think runs from 8 to 10 p.m. And the hashtag is Journ Chat. And it's just a Twitter conversation about journalism. And they ask 3 or 4 questions or 5 questions in the course of the couple hours. And they have journalists from all over the world participate, give their thoughts, give their answers. And it's a great learning tool. So a couple hours on a Monday night, it's really cool. Yes. I love Facebook because it's full of people. There's no pressure to be brilliant because you can speak for a lot more than 140 characters. Everything on it is integrated, so you can do photos and video and sound and links and everything. And it's versatile. Facebook has 800 million people. I hate Facebook because they don't listen to anything. You can't contact anyone there and get something changed. It has a convoluted privacy structure that does change every minute. So you don't know, geez, that I gashed my head underneath my porch a week ago, and there was blood everywhere, so we took a photo. And I put it up on Facebook, and do I want my mother on Facebook seeing the photo of me just dripping with blood from my stupidity, or is there a way I can protect it? I don't know. I don't know how to hide any of this stuff, and I'm doing this for a living because it just changes every second. It's very trendy. Everyone wants to be there.
Do you have any information about whether you delete photos on Facebook, whether they're actually just archiving you? I don't really think there is a way to delete photos.
It depends if you're talking about deleting or untagging, or if you're the person.
Untagging, I know. But
Did you post the photo, or did someone else post the photo?
it doesn't matter.
It does matter.
Well, I mean, I'm asking you academically.
Oh, okay. I believe they keep it on their servers anyway, no matter how it's done. But if someone else posted it, you can take it out of your stream, but it still lives there. Everyone can still see it. So when you look at Facebook now and it has the strip of photos up by your name, and these are all the photos that you were recently tagged in that someone else took or that you took. And we just got back from the journalism conference down in New Orleans, and a colleague of mine tagged me in every photo of every historic building, even though I was in none of the photos. So now there are 90 photos tagged of me, and they're all coming up, and it's historic New Orleans. And going...
Okay, so that's interesting. Then you can manipulate the images simply by incorrectly tagging.
Oh, yeah, definitely. A lot of people or a lot of companies, when they want to get attention for a brand, a lot of car companies do this. If they're introducing a new car, they tag a lot of social media influencers in the photo of the car.
Do you have any idea how to slice an image so that it actually, some of the award winners on Mashable were like, they took one single image and sliced it?
I don't.
I mean,
That I don't know. She did mention Mashable. Mashable is a fantastic resource for finding out social media tools. There's a slide on that coming up too. So when we get to all the slides I mentioned that are coming up, we'll probably blast right through them. But now this tells me we have 2 minutes left. So I'm just going to go forward a little bit. And I will give you this slide, and then we'll do questions, and then I'll give you the link to this whole presentation. There are 25 slides you haven't seen. And the presentation that you'll download has all these slides, but also has my speaker notes underneath it, so you won't have to look at this and be like, oh, what was he going to say when he talked about that? Look at that for a second. And if you're reaching out to students, this might be right on their level of describing this to them. So when you get the presentation and download it, take a screenshot of this and maybe use that in your next session and say, here's how we go. So I'm going to dash to the end, if I can. As you can see, there are a lot more things. There's Mashable. There's Muckrack. That's me. That's the link. And that says jiconf, all lowercase, .pdf at the end of my URL. And I apologize for not getting through everything, but it's a lot to learn, especially in an hour.
So you're open to taking a few questions?
Yeah, I'm here. I don't have a flight till Sunday night, so go ahead.
I know that a number of news organizations, both specific news organizations and professional organizations, have established guidelines, policies on use of social media. Do you know of a clearinghouse site or a
Yes.
to list those?
We found that during breakfast. And I think it's still on my phone. And it was 175 of those guidelines. Let me just, I gotta wait for it to come up because I hadn't, it's called Social Media Governance. And it's 175 policies in a database of outlets that have social media. Let me see if I can get the URL. It's socialmediagovernance.com/policies.php. .php. So social media governance, yep. And I was amazed because it came up during the social media, one of the social media tables at breakfast, and someone said, oh, there are like 60 policies out there. And I was like, I think there's got to be more than that. So I did a quick search, and I guess that underscores the fact that no matter where you are, if you're adept at finding stuff, at learning how to search, that's going to serve anyone well. And I think that's a big thing for students to learn as well, is knowing how to search, knowing how to rephrase search terms, knowing how to just find stuff online. So, yes?
I'm curious where you came up with the 60-40 rule. Particularly, I'm going to give two competing examples. One, there's a research study that shows they experimentally manipulated teens, or I think it's actually college students, following their professors, and they liked the guy the best when he gave no information, when he just did, hey, I'm having beers, like he was the most credible, the most liked. So in that case, sharing any information was a downer. But at the same time, when I talk to the students who use it, when I talk to people on Twitter, they say, I don't care what you're doing, I don't want to know you went for a run and you showered and all that good stuff, that's what Facebook's for. So where did you come up with that rule?
It's personal experience, and I think people who are lying, I think the people who say they don't want to see a photo of your food are lying, because people do live vicariously through what other people do. They want to know what other human experiences happen. As a lifetime freelancer, my 70-30 is probably higher than maybe 50-50 could be.
Someone shared this with me, and I think this works for me, and I can share this with my students, the 30-30-30 rule.
Okay.
30 personal, 30 informational, 30 informational, and 30 news.
Okay.
So 30% personal, putting my wife's dishes all out the street. 30 information, which I consider links.
Yep.
Sharing, and then news, that which, I'm not saying, Egypt is falling, because that's not news.
Right.
Everybody knows that, but I mean things that I don't know what news would be.
Maybe retweets or sharing what they find somewhere else and what other people are doing outside that circle.
Right, but I think 30-30-30 works.
Yeah. Again, there are no rules. It's just a matter of what works for people and how they want to use the tools. But yeah, I do think people want to see photos of your food.
Put stuff up about your wife, send your followers.
Oh yeah. Well, if you do it on Facebook, you get a ton of comments.
Yes, I do that. It makes me look like I'm really sensitive, but I'm just trying to extend my brand.
Right.
I use my wife.
Yeah. I didn't talk about Quora, but there's a slide right here on it. Yeah, Quora is a great resource for getting questions answered. It's very similar in my mind to the answers section over on LinkedIn, except that it's more crowdsourced and a little less professional. They also are policed in the same way that Wikipedia is policed, which can be a little annoying because you have some people that are a little power focused, editing some of your questions down, and you're like, well, that's not what I meant. But you can get an answer to anything. I wanted to know where to get a DSLR sensor cleaned in the Boston area, and I had 5 answers in a matter of minutes. And I don't use it a whole heck of a lot, so I've only asked like 2 or 3 questions since it's been out, and I still had enough people who were on there. So it's got, I wouldn't say critical mass, but it's got mass. and a lot of people there answering questions. The two other slides I wanted to share, because you might just overlook these. Noam is a brand protection, essentially, site. What I love to talk about is protecting one's brand and getting your name on every social site that you can, because when these kids come out of college, there are probably going to be a few traditional news organizations left, but the mindset should be, at least in my mind, that they should protect their own brand and be their own brand. So go get your name wherever you can, because that's what you'll be living on down the road.